Good evening. My name is Frank O'Connell. I appreciate panelists to take a seat. Little change in procedure in this particular meeting because the presentation that we're going to give, the slide presentation, projector or the computer don't hook up properly, so as a result we will not be doing the actual presentation. But
So may we move this then so we can see the
Sure.
panelists on that side of the room and vice versa?
as a member of the city council in Marina, I've had numerous town hall meetings, and I don't know, I think this is the 36th one. And I only say that because I want to thank my wife, Linda, for all the effort she's put through at these 36. You see a lot of homemade cookies and some drinks over there. Feel free to get up at any time to help yourself. I'd like to introduce the panel, which I want to thank very much for taking the time on Martin Luther King Day to come in. This was a case where you grab the community room in the library when it's available, and then you have to coordinate it with other people to make sure everyone's available. This was the date we got. We did hear some people say, you know, why are you doing it on Martin Luther King Day? This quick question that's before us tonight, the discussion that's before us tonight, is coming to the City Council this Wednesday. It's also an ongoing discussion in the past and in the future with the school board. So we thought it would be appropriate to bring it forth, get your opinion as well as get opinions of the council, of the panelists in this matter. But starting over on my left, the gentleman is Tom Jennings. He's the trustee from Marina towards the Monterey Peninsula Unified School District. Next to him is the school superintendent, Mr. Diffenbaugh. Next to him, and to my immediate left, is the city manager, Layne. To my immediate right is Recreation Director Terry Siegrist. Next to Terry is the police chief, Nieto.
Yes, sir.
Believe me, if it doesn't have an O in front of it, I have trouble with it. And at the very end is the other representative trustee for the city of Marina, the Monterey Peninsula Unified School District, Wendy Askew. On the presentation, and the gentleman, I'm sorry, could you introduce yourself?
I'm Officer Mike Ball with Marine Police. I'm the school resource officer for the city.
And since the PowerPoint wasn't working, we decided to switch over to a live PowerPoint. That would be Michael Ball.
That would be me right here. I have a teleprompter right here in front of me.
And also, if you sign up, Frank, real quick, if you sign up with an email, we'll be happy to email out the PowerPoint at the end of this presentation, so you can have a copy of it to take a look at it and to talk to, you know, whatever groups you belong to discuss the program.
And the reason I didn't introduce him is because he's not on the panel. He is now. Anyhow, let us, if you want to, since we cannot do the slide presentation, would you like to commence with making a verbal presentation on the
Michael, yeah.
To proceed.
school resource officer? Please do so.
Okay, so like I said, I'm the school resource officer for the city. For the school district, there are 3 of us. That includes Seaside and Monterey. 3 different cities, but we all fall under the same umbrella, under the school district. So my role within the school is basically, I'm a police officer that works in and with the schools in collaboration with the district, but I focus on, of course, the Marine schools. I have 5 schools in my city, and I kind of rotate my time within those 5 schools. Predominantly, I end up at the high school mostly. I wouldn't say for obvious reasons, but there seems to be more going on in the high school. Middle school will be a second, my second area where I'm predominantly patrolling. And when I say patrol, it's not like I'm driving around a patrol car like looking for bad guys. Okay, that's part of my job. The bulk of my job is, well, there's 3 things. Basically, I'm first and foremost a law enforcement officer. I'm also a informal counselor, an educator, and a mentor as well to some of these kids in our society. Those are the 3 main functions, and I throw in the mentor because it's really important. A lot of kids look up to me as an officer. I still wear the uniform like anybody else, any other officer on the street. It's the same uniform. I like it like that. Reason being is I'm easily identified straight away. And in my job, that's really important. Because when you're carrying a gun around, and yes, I carry a gun in schools, I think that's another really important thing as well. For obvious reasons, your patrol officer has a gun to keep everybody safe. Much like myself, I carry a gun on school grounds to keep everybody safe. I'm the first responder. I'm the first port of call. Something happens, I'm it. So basically, okay, we're moving on here. So I've already kind of covered that part of it. Just click it.
Got it? Okay, now just click it.
Okay, so my primary role is maintain a safe learning environment for all community stakeholders. And like I said, my main role is to be a law enforcement officer. I'm a police officer, that's what I do. But I'm not in the business of arresting our kids. In fact, it's the opposite. I spend a lot of my time educating and teaching, trying to get kids to kind of realize that all police, we're not out there to arrest them. Yeah, we're there to make that arrest should that happen, should that be needed. But there are other courses of action, other alternate dispositions that we can achieve with some of the programs that we have with the city. So characteristics of an SRO, and that's the school resource officer. So obviously I'm a sworn peace officer with the city. I was properly selected and trained. I did take a course specifically for the SRO. I would like to take the advanced version just to kind of broaden my scope of learning. And it is a learning curve as well. I've been doing this for a year and a half. I've been a police officer for 14 years. But this specific role, very different than what I'm used to, but it is very community-based. So I was properly selected by the school district and the police department. I'm dedicated to serve the community, specifically the schools that I'm assigned to. I am actually a school official, believe it or not, so I fall under that umbrella as well. I'm dedicated to building and maintaining a safe, trusting school environment. Collaborate with the schools, the families, the juvenile justice system, the DA's office, probation, and recreation department. Recreation is key as well. It's a hand-in-hand kind of role that we play here. So most of all, though, the officer has to be a good fit for the position. I'm very community-oriented, very community-minded, and that's basically the role. You really have to be a people person. I apologize for this. It's kind of bitter. It's up there on the seat. There's some photos of me right here. It's me with some kids, me at the torch run, and me with a student that graduated high school.
They're all smiling.
They're all very happy.
They are, yeah.
In fact, the young man here, he was one of our police cadets. Unfortunately, he's not part of the program anymore. On a good note, he went to Chino State, and he is in his first year of university. So really proud to see him achieve that. So a well-written MOU is critical to the success of the program, and we do have that in place right now. It does need updating. I think the date needs to be changed on the top of it, but I think we're still good. Keeping students safe and supporting the educational mission as law enforcement officer and educator and informal counselor. That's what we call the triad, basically the 3 points there that I mentioned earlier. And of course, mentoring and effective communication among all stakeholders. So why does the SRO program work? Well, you've got to have a genuine interest in what you do. It's not just your average beat cop that comes in off the street. And unfortunately, that's what you're going to get. The removal of an SRO from the school district, unfortunately, means you'll get an officer, absolutely. An officer will show up to the school board. However, they're not going to be familiar with the school, the layout, the teachers, the staff, and more importantly, most importantly, the children. Day-to-day contact is really important to develop that rapport with everybody. To have an understanding of the school community and its stakeholders, that is key right there. Daily contact and involvement with the staff and students. So the SROs and principals have shared interest in maintaining a school environment. Across the country, SROs share a common goal, developing rapport and trust. Those are two key things there with both the students, staff, families, and the list does go on. Well, this is actually, I like this quote. This is actually an SRO out of Pennsylvania. And this is what he said. It was an article that he wrote. Every student is fighting a daily battle with what that we know nothing about. We may think that student behavior at a given moment is driven by something trivial, but it is often has much deeper roots than what is visible on the surface. The key is to build relationships with students before problems arise. So what makes Marina different than any other SRO program? Well, there's me, of course. That's the important part. So we have a program, it's an alternate disposition program, a diversion program, that we have in place at the city. No other city does this in the district. We're really trying to work on that so everybody's on the same page. So advocating responsible choices, or ARC program, it's a diversion program in which it's basically a second chance for students. Instead of putting them through the justice system, which with me is very rare, but when push comes to shove, you know, I've got to do what I've got to do. I am a police officer after all. When somebody needs to be prosecuted, I have to take that course of action, unfortunately. However, if they meet the criteria, then we can put them through this program. So hand in hand with recreation department, probation, the school, the parent, we all get together and round table it, and basically if they meet the criteria, which is a first-time offender, a school crime, and they have no other behavioral or criminal history in the system, i.e. they're not on probation or something like that, and they own it. Basically, they've got to own what they've done. They say, yep, I did it, this is why. We put them to work. We might give them 40 hours community service, maybe write an essay, outlining their behavior and why it was wrong to do what they did, and a few other things. We even work with the families to make it interesting for them. Say the student is involved in basketball. They're very good at basketball. Hey, we'll put them to work with some kids that are interested in basketball. Let's make it interesting to them so they can, you know, maybe achieve their goal of getting through the program. Another thing that I've recently been doing is CPTED. And CPTED, for those who don't know, is crime prevention through environmental design. It's basically building crime prevention measures into the campus. For example, security, lighting, ambush points, trees, things that, you know, hiding places, things like that. And at Marina High, that was plenty of them. Nothing obvious to Joe Average that might come off the street, but I take a look at these kind of things, and if I can, you know, we'll implement some of the measures that I've put in place on paper, and just recommendations basically to achieve that goal. Basically, just a safer school and learning environment. Every 15 minutes, and I know there's more slides here that I've explained everything on it, so I might go through and do that. Okay, every 15 minutes. We do this every 2 years, and it's for the seniors, juniors and seniors, 11th and 12th grade. And it's a 2-day CHP sponsored event. And basically, I don't know, has anybody heard of it? Okay, great. I mean, it's amazing. The impact it has is incredible. And if you go online, if you actually Google it or go on YouTube and just put in every 15 minutes, we have our Marina one on there. We did it earlier last year. I think it was in March last year. And we're due to do another one next year. So it focuses on those two groups, the 11th and 12th graders, and basically it's a DUI awareness program, offers real life experience without the real life risks. We put on a mock traffic collision, and we go through the DUI process with one of the students, and it's all acting, but it looks very real. We have our emergency responders, police, fire, CHP helicopter gets involved. It's pretty amazing to watch what you get put together. So I was a part of that last year along with another former SRO, Detective Andrade. And so together we worked with our team, which was a pretty big team. We got hospitals involved, court systems, probation, and the list goes on. It was a lot of work, but end of the day, we got 15 kids. We taught them. We had speakers come in about their experiences as well. We had them, basically did a sleepover. We had one of the local hotels here host us. So that's where we had a lot of group discussion, people coming in and talking about their experiences. CHP was there also. So it was a really good program for the kids, and they really liked it. Okay, impact of removing SROs from our schools. Compromising the safety of everybody, basically. The SRO is the school's first line of defense. When minutes or even seconds count, I'm most likely going to be at a school. I can't be everywhere at once, obviously, but if I focus my time on key schools that I know where I'm needed at a certain time frame.
Can you speak up a little bit louder, please?
I'm not speaking loud enough? Okay, I thought I had a booming voice.
Let's not forget there are people in the very back of the room.
You need a microphone.
I do? Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. I'll speak out.
Arson employees, that's always
Can we
good.
start over?
Not going to happen. Okay, so I'll speak up a little bit. So the SRO is the first line of defense. When minutes count, the SRO will likely be the first on scene to take law enforcement action. Patrol car versus SRO. Okay, so I've already developed rapport with students, staff, and everybody at the school. Patrol cop's going to come along, and yeah, you'll get a response, like I mentioned earlier. Everybody at Marina knows what they're doing. You're going to get good results. However, you might not get it in a timely manner when expected, because we have to prioritize things, and that rapport is not there as well. But like I said, we have great staff here, so we work through it. SEPTED and ARC in every 15 minutes are going to go away, unfortunately. If I go back to patrol, which is most likely going to happen if I'm removed from this position, I will find the time to do what I can, but time is limited when you're on patrol with a focus on other areas. So the ARC in particular, the Advocating Responsible Choices program, it's huge. I can't even tell you how big it is. And that's a whole other presentation as well. Basically saving kids, bottom line. We're stopping them from getting into the juvenile justice system by putting them to work. So they've got to earn. Absolutely.
You know, one of the things, you know, by removing the SRO, because people have asked me, you know, what is the benefit to the SRO program? And I try to tell people, you know, it is about relationship. And Mike ends up, you know, developing relationships with the children at our schools, with the faculty, with the students. Think of it as your chief of police. What if you hired a chief of police and all they did was go to meetings, look at stats, tell the cops what to do, and never interacted with all you folks to come up with creative ways to do things, right? How effective would be in a community in coming up with new and different ways and being innovative and solving the problem together as a community? That would be so pulling an SRO out of the school is the same thing. Schools now are good, you're gonna get police service, but you're not gonna have that police service where the police officer really knows what's going on with his families, what's going on in the community. The community, in this case, being the schools itself. Because Mike really specializes in that kind of stuff, of really getting to know these people. That's his job. His job is about developing relationships with the troubled kids. You know, the ART program, that's a restorative justice program. You may hear that in the papers, because that's what the papers like to talk about. So we're talking about looking at the behaviors and restoring communities to heal both the community and the students on that program. So you're going to lose stuff, you're going to lose that, because the police have to, for restorative justice to work, police have to be a part of it. That is just how it's done in law enforcement on a national level, on a state level, and also regionally on a regional level. The SEPTED piece of it, the environmental piece of it, you know, Mike has been to a lot of training to be qualified. It's actually a qualification that he carries to look at how we environmentally make our campuses safer. So there's a lot of things that you're not just losing a couple, you're losing a lot of expertise and familiarity with community projects. Again, the police department, Marina Police Department, you know, if the SRO program goes away, we're going to do things to the best of our ability. We believe in that, but it may not be to the degree of service that the students are getting now, and it is about the students. I just want to remind people, it is about the students. I know Mike goes in a uniform, and you missed all the pictures, but very little of that time is spent, like what people say, well, it's a pipeline to jail, and you're thrown in jail. No, it's not. Can you imagine if our children, all they ever saw the police officers was when they were in trouble? And that's what we don't want with our community, is that the only time we show up is because they're in trouble and they're going to jail. You know, we're going to do what we're going to do no matter what the community decides, because we're going to try to make it work again as a police officer. But for me, the SRO program is something that's embraced nationwide. It's embraced in the state of California. And I'm not going to tell war stories, but I've had the experience where, you know, my SRO programs have saved the community from what could have tragically happened either to students or to the community itself. So with that, Mike, I'm going to turn it back over.
I appreciate that. Thanks for filling some of those gaps there. So common misconceptions, fact versus fiction. The pipeline of prison. That's not Marina. That's somewhere else. It may exist, okay, but that's not how we roll in Marina. Okay, intimidating uniform and guns. Yeah, I'm a police officer. I dress in the same uniform. I have a gun. There's nothing new there. Okay, I'm easily identifiable as a police officer. I'm the guy you go to when you need help. It's really that simple. You, for want of a better phrase, dumb down the uniform or make it look a little more civil, if that makes sense, non-action based. I'm walking around with a gun. I want everybody to know I'm a police officer. I don't want to be mistaken for anybody else. Bottom line. So it's about identification. SRO does not target undocumented immigrants. Okay, that's not even a thing. If that comes up, I report that to the that's never come up to me anyway. So if I have to report it to whomever. But in my situation, I'm not focusing on that. I'm not looking around the campus for that. That's not my job. That's somebody else's job.
And it's illegal in our state to do that. So I want to point that out, that it is illegal and we don't do that. In order for any undocumented folks, the federal government has to get a warrant, and we don't assist them with any of what ICE does. Other than they might notify us, we have a warrant and we're in your community. And that's just a safety issue, so we don't have officers, you know, pulling guns on each other.
The truth, I like to think of it more as, instead of the pipeline to prison, it's the conduit to college. I'm a big promoter of higher learning. I cannot push that point any harder. And I'm really proud of some of our cadets and some of the students that I've been lucky enough to work with have made it to that level. They're in college or they've graduated. We promote education and provide reasonable alternatives to prosecution. It's not about putting kids in jail, bottom line. I already explained that part right there. So police carry guns and wear clearly identifiable uniforms to promote campus safety. Look, I don't have to spell this out. Columbine, Sandy Hook, Virginia Tech, I mean, the list just keeps going on and on and on. Unfortunately, we do have to train students and teachers alike. In Alice, which is a active shooter or active killer on campus, we hate to talk about it. It's not a nice topic, and I don't particularly like talking about it. However, it's reality. Okay, so we do drills. We do fire drills all the time. Nobody thinks about doing drills for kids that, hey, what if there's a bad man on campus carrying a gun, carrying a bomb, carrying a machete? What are you going to do? You're just going to sit in your classroom and lock the door? No, we teach alternatives. So that's what we want to put out there and promote, campus safety. The ARC program and alternative dispositions are favored above all. We really work with students to get them in this program. Unfortunately, there are people that, they might fall off the wagon, so to speak, and they may get another ticket. They may get a truancy citation or something, but we work with them. So if they do get in trouble again after entering this program, it's a balancing act. They sign a contract, they're aware of the consequences, we put them to work, and basically, it's on them at the end of the day. If they want this bad enough, they can get out of this ticket.
And you know, when you look at preventing crime, so when you look at strategies, one of the strategies that's adopted now nationwide for police officers is to work with these kids and help them get into college and help them become productive members of the community. And people go, why would you spend so much time doing that as a police officer? Because when they're adults, they're not out committing crime that I have to now try to go catch them. So it's almost like a no-brainer, you know, when you explain it that way. Why now in law enforcement, you know, in the Central Coast and Monterey Peninsula, that we do spend so much time working with our youth, why we have PAL programs, why we have cadet programs. Because if we can help them succeed, because we understand we're mentors for them, if we can help them succeed, then they're going to go on and become productive members of our community, you know, 4, 5, 6, 10 years, 20 years. And we understand that we have a direct impact on crimes that may be committed in the future. So this is a strategy that's actually adopted by police agencies here in California and both on a national level.
So, contrary to maybe popular belief, I'm not a classroom or school disciplinarian. I'm not involved in the process of expulsion and suspension. It's not my role, that's an administration role. If it's law enforcement related, absolutely I'm involved. That's part of the process. However, I'm not directly involved in any classroom disciplinary action. SRO is the last resort, basically the last line of defense. Okay, so if there's an issue at school, they will do everything they can through positive behavior intervention to avoid calling the police. But if need be, sometimes I have to be there. Even if it's just to educate the student or the staff on the matter. That might be as simple as that. That might avoid any other further action that we need to take.
I can't hear.
Sir, why don't you move up to the front here, maybe that'll help you.
We'd be happy to welcome you up.
Maybe we should have you up.
So there's more photos of me here. Yeah. There's me playing basketball with the kids.
Councilwoman had a question, Mike.
Well,
No,
what-
Councilwoman,
can we hold the questions till we get through the presentation? please?
I thought it was done, sorry.
We're nearly, but very nearly there. I'm sorry to talk your ears off, but here it is. I'm gonna call on Terry right here. If I could have you, if you'd be so kind to explain this little piece of the yeah,
So-
that would be great.
In the back of the room, there's a diagram that is available to everybody. This is called the box theory. The box theory is a national model that was created here in Marina that was promoted by America's Promise. And it's a simple diagram that goes back to counseling where an individual student in what we call wraparound is surrounded by a support system through mental health, community, other things. We just expanded the wraparound program to be citywide. And so the box theory, where you see the box, what we try to do in Marina and have done successfully since 2007 is we create safe havens in the city for all of our youth. And the way we do that is through the box. As you can see at the top of the box is the police department. And again, police department from preventative issues, not from the criminal aspect, but in preventive issues such as SRO, cadet program. They're on the top. Schools are on the right side. Schools are extremely important in maintaining the safety of our kids. The recreation department, its focus is on the left side, providing extensive amount of programs so that all of the youth in the city, as much as we can, are engaged in some form of recreation or in some form of activity that keeps them engaged. And then the bottom of the box, the platform at the bottom, that's the community, that's you. That's where the box sits. That's one of the most important pieces of the box. And then again, that box then creates safe havens for every youth in Marina. The behavior code that we use is set by the school district, and that determines the expectation of our youth throughout the community. Whether you're in Walmart, you're at school, you're out on the street, you're at the playground, you're at the park, those expectations don't change. And we've tried to extensively educate our young people from the beginning that that's a behavior code and an expectation of a Marina youth. That's what we expect of you every day. Looking down, the recreation department provides mentors, positive activities, snacks, a safe place for youth, including late night and weekends. Our teen center is open on Saturdays till 10, on Fridays till 9, so that we can ensure that our kids are engaged. The youth center right now has 150 after school every day. The teen center breakfast program serves about 225 on average every day. After school at the teen center, we see 300 to 500 kids every day. Saturdays and Sundays, 100, 150, just depending. The community, that's everybody in this room. Parents, business, community sports leagues, volunteers, jobs, volunteer opportunities for youth. All of the things that the community does to support our kids is a critical link and the base of the box. The schools set the behavior and dress code reinforced by city rec, coordinates with rec staff or specific individuals, work together hand in hand. PK and I meet quarterly. Our schools are directly connected to our recreation programs. We're directly connected to our schools. We do everything collaboratively. Then the police department, again, the school resource officer coordinates the school's rec department and families, the art program, which is our diversion program, the cadet program, and the police athletic league. All of those programs, again, are preventative programs which engage our kids with our officers, and again, build that rapport, build that respect, build that relationship. That's the 3 R's. It starts with respect, goes to relationship, and then is built on the basis of rapport. Early breakfast programs served every day that school's in session, which our truancy rate, when we opened that program in 2007, we had a 90% improvement in truancy rate and lateness to school. Mentors, every one of our young people from 4th grade up has a mentor in some way, shape, or form. Whether it's the guitar teacher, the school resource officer, a board member, the mayor. We try to make sure, and we work with all of our kids to make sure there is one connection that every kid has. Statistically, all of the successful youth programs that are extremely successful are successful if they have a mentoring component. The mentoring component is critical. And then smart design. When you look at the teen center location and the youth center location, they're located directly in the areas where we have our extensive population of young people. The recreation center right next to the middle school on the pathway to the high school and centrally located to the city, and the community center right next to the police station. Those are the 2 areas of the city that we have our highest intensity of youth. So again, one of the things that we've done and that this council, city manager, and our school folks support is that theory, because what we found is that it's been successful, and that's the reason why it's successful, and that's why Salinas and other of our communities are trying to rebuild that, because they lost that ability to stay connected with their kids. That increased their youth violence and their gang activity. Marina has been successful in maintaining a 0 homicide rate for a long time now, knowing that what the homicide rate is in Seaside and what the homicide rate is in Salinas for under 18, and we're right in the middle. But this community, this council, this city manager, our police chief and staff, we've all worked together, our superintendent, to maintain that safety. And that's really, really important. And the box theory is how that's done.
Thank you, Terry. Officer, you want to continue?
Good.
Yeah, you finished? Okay, great. If you have, when you came in, if you got a little red piece of paper, on that paper there were 7 questions which I put together actually before I received the presentation, the slide presentation. I was going to go through each 7, but you people have been sitting here listening. I'll just ask the panelists in general, are there any of those questions that anyone in the panel would like to address at this time? If so, would you read the number and the question and then give your response? If not, just open it to the public for a question. Clear? Okay, Wendy,
I have all sorts of comments prepared for all of your questions.
comments or response to your question?
Responses to your question. So I'm happy to share some of that, or if we wanted to go to the public. I'm not sure where the,
Okay, well, then
how do you want it?
you're the only one, so why don't we do it this way? Everyone have a copy of the 7 questions, and you're not limited as to those questions. You can ask any question. I was going to have you write down the question because I was anticipating a much larger crowd, but since you people are dedicated enough to come out on a holiday, I truly appreciate it. Let's open it to the public. If you want one or more of those questions that are listed to be answered, just reference the question, and if you want some individual up here to answer it, please designate that person. Otherwise, raise your hand if you have a question, and I'll call on you.
I have a question.
Councilwoman Morton.
Just Gail. So the question that I have is, in a work week, is your entire work day, every day you go to work, pretty much at the school, at a school facility between the 5 schools? So you're on some campus during your work shift?
Yeah, I do try and stay out of the office, and that's one thing I would like to have is an office on one of the campuses, most likely the high school. But they're very, very accommodating, so whenever I go into on campus where I have specific areas I can go to talk privately with students. But to answer your question, yes,
okay.
for the most part. But I do have to go to work to the PD. I have to prepare things,
Okay.
you know, type police reports, things like that. So when I'm available, yes.
So obviously what I'm looking at there is the justification for the contribution from the school district. The other question, if I'm just going to ask a follow-up question, you talked a great deal about the services that are provided to the older children, such as ARC, which mainly is going to be your high school. I mean, at some point you have developed an ability to see consequences and figure that out. My observation of this program when I had a child in grade school was there was a great service done by the SRO officer at the kindergarten through 5th grade level, in the sense that you become a familiarized person in the community, that wearing that uniform is not a place of fear, but you're cultivating a relationship with the kids in the family. You didn't talk about that, and I want to be sure that's still within the scope of this assignment. So by the time they're in junior high and high school, you're a recognizable person that they want to impress and have your approval. So can you address that a little bit?
Absolutely. No, I do have 5 schools total, 1 high school, 1 middle school, and 3 elementaries. Now, I'm there daily. Of course, I can't be everywhere at all times, so I pick a school each morning. I'm there, I'm walking the beat, I'm out there in the public eye, saying hi to everybody as they come into school. Not only am I there for law enforcement activities such as traffic control, things like that, but mostly, it's pretty rare I write a ticket in front of the school because it's just going to create a problem. However, I have been known to write tickets. So if I'm standing in front of a school, then I'm visible. So, and I have a full supply of stickers as well because I get that a lot. It's really key right there. So I do develop rapport with those students at a young age, including the parents as well. So I'm a pretty familiar face on campus. I've been doing it 1.5 years now, so everybody should have a general idea of what I look like. I'm at least at one of those campuses every morning, and then in the afternoon I'll do the same, but it just depends on how my day goes. Sometimes I don't make it back out to the school. So I'll try and hit one of the schools in the mornings, and then which they mostly start at 8 o'clock. Then I'll go to the middle school, which starts at 8:30. So I can kind of time that. So I'll at least be at 2, maybe 3 schools in the mornings. And then in the afternoons, I go where I'm needed. But if I'm available, I'm there at lunchtime. I'll walk around the campus. I'll say hi to the kids, and I've even done classroom presentations, like officer-friendly presentations. And I'm working on an elementary level ALICE training for the little guys. That's the hard part, because we're talking about bad things, so we don't want to, you know, exactly. So that's in the pipeline right now. So and that's really important to get that out there as well, so they kind of learn from a young age. But to answer your question, yeah, I'm there where I can, but I kind of go where I'm needed when I'm not available. So.
And also, school resource officer, it is all about relationships with the community, relationships with the children, relationships with the family of those children. So when we get complaints, say traffic issues, we don't say, Michael, go solve this issue. We will take other patrol officers that do traffic in order to engage the community in that piece. Because we have to maintain that relationship. And if Michael's out there just writing tickets, then you're gonna lose that relationship and the goodwill feeling that he spent many, many days, months, years establishing with that community. Because we want the school resource officer to be seen as someone that the children can reach out to for help and see them as a mentor, you know, to develop a more productive community. So that's not, even though you put law enforcement in there, that is like the last ditch effort because he happens to be there, something bad is happening, and you have to take action right away because he is a law enforcement officer. But when it comes to the day-to-day enforcement type of issues that police officers still have to do, it's not going to be Michael that gets tasked with that issue. It's other officers that I task or my commander's task to handle those things.
We have a couple other responses to that. For example, Red Ribbon Week, when we have Red Ribbon Week, the council certifies that proclamation, and Mike is in every one of the classrooms passing out the bands during that week. Another thing that we do during the Giant sign-up is our officers are out. Mike specifically is out on the campuses promoting the Junior Giants program, building the relationship of cops and kids so that consistently you know, there's other opportunities to be on those campuses to support those programs, to give a purpose and again, build the relationship. So it's consistent and it's ongoing and it's just really, really critical that that's built.
And the monies that support some of those programs are actually not coming out of city coffers. They're coming out of these nonprofit programs that only exist because there is a relationship with police officers, because they're set up for police officers. Police Activity League, for example, all the bands was bought through their funding, not through city coffers, not through school funds, not through Parks and Recs, but through the police activities funds. But because we work together, most people don't know that. It's just a city thing because of our relationship. Yes.
Yes, in the back, Dennis?
Question 1G, but an interesting point. What is as far as Marina and the...
I'm sorry, could you read the question about?
What is the financial burden to MPUSD and Marina?
Who would like to handle that? Already.
So a police officer costs about $120,000 a year. And our previous agreement, we split that cost 50-50. The new agreement that the district has proposed for this current fiscal year is to not split it, only split it for 10 months. There's 2 months during the summertime and they didn't want to split that, so.
You're talking split between the schools?
Correct.
And roughly 120,000.
Correct.
So the cost to the school district to go from August 2nd, 2017 to June 1, 2018 is a little over $72,000. For that same period of time, if the city council approves on Wednesday, it's Wednesday at 6:30, it'll cost the city approximately $101,000 for this year. So what you have to think about is, do you think that this program is worth $101,000 from the city's fund and $72,000 from the school district's fund? Or do you think it is not? Feel free to raise your hand and make a comment on that.
Can I just clarify? So I just want to clarify because it's the cost of the officer is salary plus benefits. So that's why you're getting it. So altogether, It's usually around 160, some places 180,000 total, and then it's split that way.
Ms. Blow?
So during those 2 months, I'm assuming that's because that's the summer break.
Yes.
So what does so this particular position then is no longer on the school campus? Don't we have activities on the school campuses during the summer? I'm confused.
Yeah, we do. We have limited summer school. We don't have summer school in the elementary age groups. We have limited summer school for high school and limited for middle school.
So does this officer get reassigned to general duties for the department, or how does that work?
Yeah, that'll be our discussion on Wednesday at the city council, but that's the assumption is
I don't
they'll.
think anybody has a question about the value of the program. I think it's about financing. How does it get financed? I think that's
Louder.
what I said. Here's my stage voice. I don't think anyone questions the value of the program. It's about finance and how it's funded. That's all. Yeah.
Is there, yes, Wendy,
Yeah,
please.
sorry. I just wanted to go back to a couple of the things Officer Ball was talking about with the contract. So I brought copies of the contract. I don't.
Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. So I don't know if anyone has actually read the contract, but I brought copies for anyone that wanted to read the contract. So those are here. The high school, per the contract, is supposed to be providing an office for the SRO. So in each of the 3 communities, MPUSD serves Monterey, Seaside, and Marina. We have currently an SRO half funded through each one of those cities. And at that high school, for each of those locations, at each of the city's high schools, there should be space for an SRO to have an office on campus. There's a number of other things that are in the contract as far as the dates, as far as the scope of services for what the SRO agreement includes and doesn't specify. So I think one of the things that I wanted to, or that I would like to see, if we do continue having a contract, regardless of who funds it, there's a number of things in the contract that I think that we need to have an ongoing conversation about and have some community input into. So if anyone wanted to take a look at that, I can pass that around. If we can want to talk about that more, I'm happy to talk about that more.
You can also, if you want to, don't have time right now, you can go to the city website, pull up the agenda for Wednesday, and if you go to item 8G1, attached to it is the proposed agreement that the city council is going to be considering on Wednesday night of this week. Yes, sir, you had a question?
Yeah, I'm concerned about, I couldn't find the information that I got, but in 2016, the Justice Department issued $44 million funding for the SROs of California. And I still need to find that, prove that. I couldn't find it, but I will get back to you. Also, I have a question about the resource officer as to his training with children. Because this family doesn't train you to work with children. Where did you learn that?
On the job training, first and foremost, as a 14-year veteran of not this department, but as a whole, I did take a class specifically dedicated for SRO. It's a mandated class. You have to take that class within the first year of becoming an SRO.
Does that involve mental health situations?
It's basically everything. It's an umbrella of everything that you're talking about. I have taken CIT training, which is crisis intervention as well. That's another thing that patrol officers also take for mental health. I'm not a therapist. Let's get that right off the bat.
But you can recognize someone with autism.
Well, like I said, I'm not a doctor. That's not my role. I'm a law enforcement officer.
So how would you handle autism? A child with autism?
Can you clarify, sir, it's hard to hear you, and we'd like to hear.
Sir, one of the things for police officers every year, and this is the state of California, and we recognize that mental health is an issue, and that police officers have to deal with them. So they are actually mandated to take classes. They're not psychologists, and you're not certified to become a psychologist or therapist, but they are mandated to take classes on how to deal with individuals with mental health issues. Now, if you're talking about autism, you may have to get specific. You're going to have to tell us where it is on the spectrum. and what type of autism it is, what is the situation. But there are actually classes where officers take to deal with autistic students. Because we do recognize that the symptoms that they're going to show and they're going to react differently than a child without autism. So we're not doctors. Michael's not a doctor. I'm not a doctor. But we do get more training than the average Joe out on the street. Because in the state of California we do recognize this is an issue. We are a post-agency, police officer standards and training, so we're mandated to take these kind of classes. I don't have my training record with me or Michael's, but we do have to take this stuff every year. So.
Can I ask this to you? It's an autism situation.
Could you speak up louder, sir?
Just
A Monterey High School had a situation with an autism individual, and the resource officer charged them with criminal intent because there was no instruction for the autism individual, so he sent it to a library, and the noise made this autism individual have a tantrum, in which case he ran out of the library and pushed a woman that was on, that had a cane, and they arrested this autism individual, but the resource officer didn't know anything about that this was a medical situation. And there was a Monterey High School got sued.
So, sir, I can't speak to how other agencies handle stuff, nor can we talk about juvenile cases because it's confidential.
Okay.
But I can tell you, they do get some training. I know that my officers do, but I can't speak to another agency. I can only speak to my officers in the city of Marina.
Speaking of which, is it legal to, our kid has a thing, it says she has a medical alert bracelet. She passes out at your school, and everyone knows it. So the person with autism, were they designated to have a bracelet or something so that an officer would know that they had autism? I mean, half the burden has to be on the family to designate, my kid has special needs. We can't ask the officers to be experts in everything.
A couple of things I'd comment on that. Each one of our schools in Marina has special classrooms and special programs that Mike is involved with, and those staff and Mike as a resource officer on a regular basis connect so that he can be exposed to those special classroom situations and how he can be helpful in those situations. So as it relates to our special needs kids and our special needs classrooms, again, we're not doctors and we're not special ed staff, but the resource officer on a continual basis connects with those programs so they get a good overview of what those children are like and how they can be helpful as it relates to the resource officer. And again, identification and the ability to recognize is a critical part of that education process.
Lisa.
Can you tell us some of the issues that you face on a day-to-day basis? I have two questions, so I'll tell them both to you. What are the issues that you encounter, and can you give us, without naming names, just a rough example of something you might deal with? And then secondly, if this program were to go away, what would replace it?
Okay, the question is, what issues can you talk about that you've had to encounter? And if the SRO program goes away, what, if anything, could replace it? Anyone on the panel, feel free to speak up.
I can do the day-to-day part, that's my job. Well, like I expressed before, I'm not an officer that's going out there looking specifically for crime. I'm not, that's my job. Obviously, I'm a police officer, I take law enforcement action, but it's so much more than that. I'm visible, I'm on campus, when people come up to me at all times for all kinds of questions regarding, hey, I got a ticket. These are students. Or Johnny hit me in the playground, you know. I'm a piece of the puzzle. I'm part of the fabric of the school. And I'm not the be-all and end-all. I'm not everything. I'm a piece of that team. So my day-to-day is basically I'll go to each school in the morning. I'll conduct some traffic duties there. I'm basically monitoring just to make sure kids and parents alike can cross the street safely. I do a meet and greet in the mornings as well. Some parents might have a question regarding something, so I'll do my best to answer that. Then I'll move on. If I have paperwork, and that just never ends, it's constant. I'll tidy some of that paperwork up, some police reports and things like that. Then I'll move on to lunchtime. I'll try and fit in my day. I'll try and go to one of the campuses during break. Once again, do a meet and greet and deal with any issues that are there. And just be visible, basically. Fly the flag, so to speak. And anything, if I have meetings as well, that never ends as well. So if I have to be involved in a meeting or divert, sometimes things change rapidly. I'll have to cancel something and move on. So my day could be as simple as going to the campus and saying hi to everybody. That's a good day. And other days, it's not so good.
What are the issues that kids bring to you that they are looking for guidance from?
Well, typically what happens is a lot of issues go on at home. They bring that to the school because there's people that, and in confidence, they're able to speak to therapists and counselors. And that in turn may or may not come my way, pending. So if it does, unfortunately, it might be a CPS referral. We mandate reporters, every one of us at the school. And then I get involved for follow-up. I'm not responsible to take on all of those cases. It's just too much. If something happens at school, that's on me. That's all me, to and from school. If something happens outside of that, I certainly do my best to be involved and conduct a follow-up, appropriate follow-up. So.
Before we get to the second question, how long have you been a school resource officer?
A year and a half.
Have you noticed when you're on campus that there are certain children just like to walk around with you?
Walk around with me? Yeah, I get students come up to me a lot, daily.
On a cordial basis?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
9 times out of 10. Yeah,
Good, thank you. That's great to hear. On the second question, if SRO were to go away, what, if any, policy would you replace them with? Terry?
I'm gonna handle that. So when I first came to Marina, actually, I'm gonna give you a real life scenario on what it would look like if we didn't have the SRO program. So there was a threat at the school, and we were made aware of the threat. It was happening when we were also doing some drills. And as a result of Mike knowing the individuals, Mike knowing the campus, Mike knowing this particular bathroom and the specifics of this particular bathroom, working with the school, we were able to do an assessment of, what kind of threat is it, what do we need to do for the children's safety. It was decided that we kept the kids in the classroom instead of going outside. It was actually the earthquake, the shake-up thing, so they're going to stay in the classroom. On an investigative point, not getting into the specifics, we were kind of able to determine, never able to prove, but kind of determine what kids might be involved to make an assessment, what kind of follow-up, again, like knowing the players and the personalities for these assessments to kind of work through the issues. We didn't have any further threats and the students felt safe. So that's the short end of a true threat that occurred on the campus on Shake-Up Day that we had to investigate. So what would it look like without an SRO? We would be notified as
Can you be a little more specific what the threat was without, obviously not, was it a gun threat, a bomb threat, a knife threat?
Yeah, the bathroom.
Basically, it was some graffiti in the bathroom saying, I'm coming to school on this day, these are the people I'm targeting.
Okay, yeah.
And, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So, what would that look like without an SRO? We obviously would have got notified about the threat. We would have responded. We would probably have been locking down the school more like a we would just be locking it down. It wouldn't look good for the community. It probably would scare the heck out of the kids, the way we would have to lock it down, not knowing personalities and what's behind this threat, because we're going to take it serious, that this person's going to go out and hurt these students. We would have dumped a lot more uniformed resources on the campus, probably than needed to be. So it becomes more of an occupying force, and that's not what we want to portray as a police department. And we may have never, if we might have tried to really go after some kids more, then maybe it rose to that level, which would have disrupted their life, maybe left a bad taste in their mouth about policing to try to figure out was this threat legitimate or not. That's what it would look like without an SRO, having the relationship. Because again, it's about the relationships that the school resource officer develops, that he can relay the information, the principal to me, to Terry, and, you know, and everybody was involved in the real incident. Everybody was involved because of the box theory and how we've set it up here in the community of Marina.
One of the,
I can give you another specific example on the diversion and art program that would go away. I have another hat. I'm a volunteer minister for a local church congregation, and about a month ago, a frantic parent gave me a call about one of their youth who just got cited for an event at the school, and he would be going down the court system, and I called him up and turned it over to our staff, and they got involved, and Officer Ball got involved, and it was a completely different outcome on that situation. I can guarantee if it got down the court system, and again, they're talking about these are long-term things that get on your record and affect college and affect everything, and that made all the difference to that one youth, our program.
one of the things, just a follow-up comment, one of the things that the resource officer program has brought to this community, going back to respect, relationship, and rapport, is that because we've had resource officers for a long time, and because several of those resource officers who are past resource officers are still on the force, I can tell you that 90% of the things that are coming down the pipe that are going to happen, we know ahead of time. Either we get information from past students who have that rapport, or through other avenues of the relationship, we'll get a heads up that something's coming our way and that we need to get on it right away. And in a lot of the situations that we face in Marina with our youth, we are on top of before it ever gets to a situation on hand, because that relationship has been built over a long time, and our kids will come forward to help us avoid a real serious situation, and it happens all the time.
So may I just follow up?
One second. Could you express or explain the probation department connection and lack of it? This may be very informative.
Yeah, so in the past, in addition to a resource officer, there's always been a probation officer connected to our schools. Based on the current relationship between probation and the school district and trying to work through a new agreement, it was determined at that time that the agreement was not in a situation that the district could agree to, because the time spent by probation was not to the level with which the fees being paid were covered. So right now, we don't have probation in our schools. That's critical, because the probation officers in the schools have been very helpful in maintaining the relationship of which one of our kids are on probation, what are they on probation for, and how is that proceeding. So that connection over this school year has been difficult to maintain, and has been already a negative to maintaining some of the information that we need in order to be successful. So, but the relationship between probation, the schools, and this whole connectivity as it relates to high-risk kids becomes really, really important. Because staying on top of our high-risk kids, knowing who they are, and again, this city has never had an emphasis on putting kids in the juvenile justice system. This city has always been proactive to doing everything they can to maintain relationships so that the juvenile justice system is the last resort. And if our young people are brought into the juvenile justice system, we're there to support them and move them out. So I want to really stress, one of the things that I'm really proud of this city, our council, and our city manager, our police department, is that it's never been a pipeline here. It has always been an attempt to maintain a relationship with those young people that are high risk and move them out of that system.
Gail?
Yes, what I would like to hear, our police officers have talked about what it looks like, what SRO does. I want to hear from the school district, how they would handle it if there is no SRO and this gentleman is out on a beat, and in some of our beats, we only have 2 patrol cops out there, and now you have the incident you did in December. What happens? So, and then I want to get into the money. But I want to know, why are we even having a discussion about MPUSD paying less than 50% the 10 months? So tell me what the school district is going to do.
Well, I think there maybe 2 different questions. So,
They are.
so the start with the second, why are we saying 10 months is because July and June and July, school isn't in session. So we're not seeing an officer every day at our schools for June and July. I don't know what they do during that time, but they're not at our schools every day. So that's why we're proposing only paying for the time that they're at our schools.
So let me follow up on the financial then. But the cost of the insurance, we pay for 12 months, whether you use them for 10 months or 12 months, it's an insurance policy. So maybe the 50-50 split on 10 months is not fair. Secondly, I have a problem with that we're getting 4 quarterly payments, so then basically my city has to finance instead of us getting paid for the 10 months, that we get paid the full amount to cover this gentleman's salary, is that we're carrying those costs, that it might not be an equitable split. So that's why I'm asking these questions. But number two is, what is the proposal that the school is going to do in that situation if the SRO is not there? And we have 2 cops out on patrol that now you have a problem where there's a safety issue of 400 kids or however many kids are on the campus.
Yeah, so I mean, I think first I know we're focused specifically on the SRO. We really view the SRO as part of our system of support. So we have a tiered system of support, which is our guidance counselors, our mental health, providers, our principals, outside support providers, SROs, others, right? So we really view the SROs as one piece of a larger systemic approach to trying to meet kids where the need is, and it's kind of a pyramid of interventions approach. In a case of imminent danger, we would call 911 and we would follow the police's recommendations. And if that meant shut down the school, we'd shut down the school. I think the difference would be because of their maybe lack of relationship between SRO and students, you won't have as many leads, you won't be able to solve things as quickly, everything that the chief said. But yes, that's what we would do, is we would call the police. I'd probably get on the phone, directly with the chief. But I think that how it unfolds and how quickly we can solve certain issues would probably take longer if you don't have an SRO who has a relationship. So one time there was some graffiti, really bad graffiti actually, on Marina High, and Officer Ball said, we were watching the video and he saw the shoes of the kid. He said, oh, that looks like so-and-so from the shoes, right? And and that was started the process. We talked, we figured it out. So it's stuff like that would be harder to accomplish. But in terms of, the basic safety, unfortunately, in those types of incidents, Officer Ball might be on campus, might not. He might be at an elementary school or might be at a high school. It happens at an elementary school, and so there's not a foolproof, plan that you can put in place. But in terms of, the trainings we do with our protocols around intruder shooter and Alice protocol, we train our staff on that. We train our students. We would continue to do that.
Yes, Steve and then Paula.
I had a couple of things. Briefly, I told my story before the city council or the board of trustees at one point. But I grew up on the south side of Chicago in the 70s, in the early 70s, where we had race riots in schools. And we started the SRO program, and it changed the entire school, and it changed the entire community. And we no longer had those race riots. We never had the type of things that we potentially could have. In those days, you settled things with fists, maybe a baseball bat. Today, it's a lot different. We all know that. So having issues from that standpoint. But, you know, I mean, it's the duty of school officials, of the council members in the police department, of everybody to change the odds in the favor of the student, and that's what the SRO is designed to do. These kids are there to learn, they have to move forward, they need a safe environment. I think Terry can address, and I would ask him to, the survey within the school as to those students now who don't feel safe at school, even with an SRO. When you're talking to what this represents, this is an insurance policy going forward for the students within our community to allow them to learn. It really doesn't, you know, the city has all sorts of ways of spending money and prioritizing that. If you can't prioritize your students and the safety of your students and the safety of your community, then you failed your job. There are ways to pay for this no matter what. And this has to be a priority. You have reserves, there are all sorts of ways that things can get taken care of. There can be grants filed.
Steve, let me stop if I may. We've got a question here.
The question was, yeah, the question was for Terry to explain the student survey.
Good, thank you.
So briefly, every year, the school district does what we call a Healthy Kids Survey. And the Healthy Kids Survey addresses safety environment, it addresses mental health, it addresses academics. Each school does a Healthy Kids Survey, and you can pull those offline on the school district website. Those statistics are absolutely critical relating to Marina because they give us a feel for how kids feel safe-wise. And the statistics sometimes are pretty staggering. So for example, 36% of our high school students have thought about suicide in the last 6 months. 36%. That's huge. So, and when we talk about the mental health issues and we talk about response time, just going back to the situation at the high school with the young man who had a heart attack in the classroom at the high school. If it wasn't for the fact that the resource officer and all of those folks at the high school played a key role in that, the response time was immediate and effective and efficient, and that young man is with us today. So the Healthy Kids Survey is a clear judge of how we're doing. And part of the Healthy Kids Survey addresses safety and how they feel safe in the schools or don't feel safe in the schools. And we still struggle at all of our school sites with our kids feeling safe. Everything from 45% that don't is I think the highest one I've seen, down to it, but it's never been lower than 25%. So again, the school environment, and as you know, if you feel safe, then you're better academically adjusted and able to function at the school level. So, and again, I would encourage you to pull up on the school district website the kids safe school surveys for each of our schools and take a look at those statistics. They're very compelling.
Paula?
Yeah, I have just a few sort of housekeeping questions. If I understood correctly, this is on the consent agenda.
Yes.
So there won't be any discussion unless somebody actually pulls it, if anybody has any. So it's on the consent agenda. That's
And I wonder if there's anyone here that's going to pull it.
Okay, so Wendy, thank you for handing this out. I have a few questions about it. However, it says the term starts August 2nd, 2017. That's like more than 5 months ago. So I'm curious as to why that is and how the funding has been handled in the interim. And then my third part, that's probably for Wendy as well, is are there any other changes other than dates and funding to this in terms of scope, purpose or any other changes, because this is a finished copy. Is there like a strikeout if there were other changes so we can see what was actually asked to be changed for this contract, other than just financing?
I think I could take both of those. So, we've been operating, basically, we had a contract for, I guess it's 16, 17, and that expired, and we've been operating, and in the terms of the contract, if you don't formally terminate it on either side, it continues on. So we've been operating under the continuing contract. This would, and we did get this to folks a while ago, but I know it's coming now. But anyhow, it is the same contract, so there won't be any difference between the last contract and this, with the exception of the 10 months and the exception of the other thing. I will say, in terms of the contract and scope of services, when I first got to the district, there wasn't anything on paper, and each jurisdiction handled things differently. And so we sat down with all the chiefs of police, and I realize there's new chiefs now, I think at every one of the jurisdictions. But at that point,
We're like school resource officers, we're dying breed.
we and we hammered out some parameters and procedures and processes that all could agree to, so that there was some consistency across jurisdictions. So that and I think there's on the website, you'll see that in addition to contract, there's kind of SRO scope of services that kind of laid that out. But just know that that wasn't the school district in the dark kind of writing it up. That was a collaborative process between all the chiefs in terms of what they felt like their jurisdiction could do.
Can I?
Wendy, sure.
Yeah.
Please.
I think this is a really important conversation, and I think there's maybe different pieces of it, right? So the city is looking at renewing the contract with the district. The district had a series of 3 meetings earlier this year where the cost of the contract was something that was a concern for the district as well. So in negotiating that, the district isn't only talking to Marina, the district is talking to 3 different cities and trying to maintain some consistency between what gets negotiated between those 3 cities. So moving into next year, the SRO contracts for the district, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I think it's important that we have this conversation. Those contracts are potentially slated to be eliminated for funding from the school district across all 3 communities. So not only are we having a conversation about the city's funding of the portion of the contract for the current school year, which is 5 months in, admittedly, now, but the next conversation that we're going to need to have, and that we really do need to have, is about for the future years and what that looks like. I think that it's really clear, and I don't know that anyone in this room would disagree, that the relationship that our schools have with our police departments in each of our cities is absolutely essential. It is so important. It is essential that we have positive, effective, working, collaborative relationships with our city police officers, our city recreation departments, and each one of our schools, our school principals, our school mental health counselors. That's a good, positive working relationship. Cost is a really real issue that I think we're all up against. The district is looking at making $5 million in cuts this year. The city, I know, has, in each of our communities, has its own fiscal challenges. We've got increasing PERS retirement contributions, we've got increasing healthcare. There's a lot of pressures on our costs. So the conversation about how do we maintain a positive working relationship between our police departments and our schools, like that has to be where we start the conversation. And then figuring out how do we do that in a way that's cost effective and is sustainable over time. How do we do that? How do we identify what are the most valuable components of our program as it exists now? What are the things in that program that allow it to be successful? and what can we collaboratively do to ensure that we maintain those best pieces, those most important functions, in a way that is affordable and can be prioritized by both the school district and the city. And for the school district, that means the school district and all 3 cities, so that we maintain some continuity in what we have. So I don't know if this is the place for that conversation to take place, but I think it's really important, and I really want to thank Councilmember O'Connell for convening this particular panel, the public. I don't know that this is something that we can solve right now, but it is a conversation that we really do need to be having and that we need to be continuing. Marina is incredible because not only do we have one full-time assigned SRO, we have, 6 other officers within the department who have gone through the SRO training. So we know that when Marina schools call for an officer, whether it's Officer Ball who arrives or whether it's another officer who's on patrol because Officer Ball's on vacation or he's not working that day or he's at another site, we know that we have officers who are responding, who are trained to work with our schools. That's not the situation. We don't have that same situation in our other cities. We have one officer who works 4 days a week, 10-hour shifts, so they're not even present 1 day a week. So we have to, I think as a school, for me as a school district representative, I want to make sure that in every community that I represent, in every community that I'm making decisions for, that if we have, so things like, do we make sure that we have one officer who's assigned to schools, or is it more important that we make sure that we've got at least one officer who's fully trained to respond to a school, who's available within that city police department? And I think those are some of the conversations that we're going to have with other jurisdictions. You know, 100 and the cost that we talked about, $101,000 from the city. Our principals, the highest range of our principals for the district is $127,000. Most of our teachers, they top out their salary at under $100,000. So we do have trained, awesome people available to us. We're going to have to start looking at some of these cost benefits at some point and have those really challenging conversations. So I've got lots more that I could talk and I came prepared to talk about. And I just also want to say that I did raise the issue with the school district about the cost of the SROs and those contracts that we had earlier last year. And I know that that's been a difficult thing for some folks, and it's raised a lot of really difficult conversations. And I'm happy to continue this conversation outside of this meeting. I really think that we're going to have to be solution-oriented and come out from our corners, whether it be, I don't want an SRO on campus at all, and there's a lot of folks that feel that way. And then other folks that say, no matter the cost, whatever the cost, you know, it's a black and white yes or a black and white no. I think we're going to have to come out of our corners and sit down at a table together and really figure out how do we make the decisions that are best for our students, all of our students, given the resources that we have available to us.
Well, maybe let me ask a question, and if you can't answer it, just say so. But should this city and the city council go on the belief that it's a question of finances, and that if somehow the city were in 1819 to raise the funds in full, would we get the cooperation of the school district to allow the SRO to stay in schools in Marina? Or are we just saying that there's a dispute going on as to whether or not an SRO officer should be in the schools in Marina at all? Can anyone answer that?
I mean, I can comment on that.
If you don't,
I can
feel
comment on
comfortable,
it.
don't.
I mean, I can't speak for the board.
Correct.
Obviously, but I do believe that the board is willing to have the SROs in the schools, that it's truly a funding issue at this point. Whether I agree with that or not, think that we should spend the money on it or not is irrelevant. I think that absolutely I'd be shocked if the board didn't vote to have the SROs at least in the schools in one way or one form or another.
Okay,
and Frank,
yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with Tom on that. And there are a handful of things just based on best practices, based on research that I've done around what I think we do need to look at the contract that we have, and I would like to have some collaborative conversations with parents and students. We definitely need to do that in other communities moving forward, but there are some things that I could speaks specifically to in the contract that I would like to look more closely at. But I think that our board, if I had to count votes today, we would have our SROs continued and questioned.
Okay, let's take 2 more questions, and then I want some closing comments from the panelists, and then we'll just sit around and eat cookies if you want to. I'm sorry?
I have a whole book of questions.
Could you give me one?
Where did the funding begin to employ SROs from the beginning, before it all started? Where did the funding come from?
I think the city of Marina has been since 2009, am I correct? Earlier than that? Okay.
We started the SRO program with the DARE program.
Yeah.
Way back.
At times, there's been grants to, from the federal government to start SRO programs, and then the cities or the district agrees to pay to continue it. But we've been paying for half the cost of the SROs for certainly as long as I've been here, and I think for longer than that. So I think it's been a while, but there may have been a grant at some point in the past to help you kind of start it. I do know in the city of Seaside did apply for a grant again, which would add a second SRO, but it was the type of thing where they could get grant funding for a few years, and then it would be on the city to continue that. So there are grants out there, but not usually to fund it in forever. It's usually startup funds.
And one more question, someone. Don't be shy. Gail, you got one?
I just wanted
I'm
to
sorry,
find
wait,
out.
hold on. Just a second.
Is there an alternative on the agenda from either the school district or the city where you would use that $120,000 elsewhere? Is there a competing interest?
That relates
If not,
to
it's
this?
kind of a done deal, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I mean, yes. So we're facing the district for a number of reasons I could get into with great detail, but financial challenges both in the short and long term, and we're forced to make some difficult reductions. We've already done phase 1 of that, and we're going to go to the board. We've had public hearings on phase 2 and are going to go for the final next board meeting. So yes, there's competing interests. The reductions have to come from somewhere. If they don't come here, then we need to look at other places, whether that's site budgets, whether that's district budgets, whether that's positions, not filling vacancies. I mean, there's a lot of other things, but we do have to be fiscally solvent for the near and long term, and so we do have to make tough decisions.
PK, and it is correct, board members, that the SRO elimination is scheduled for that final vote at that meeting, correct? For the future.
Yeah, so the funding for that's part of phase 2 of our fiscal stabilization plan, which is a number of different things. One, looking at outside contracts was one area that we focused in, and the SRO contracts are part of the outside contracts we're looking to reduce. And that at the next board meeting, which I think is the 23rd, will be coming, well, I haven't had the agenda setting meeting, but we believe will be coming up for a vote on the 23rd. We've already had 2 information items on the phase 2 of this fiscal stabilization plan, so it's already been heard publicly twice, and now it becomes for a vote.
Okay, anyone on the panel, Wendy, you said you wanted to address several questions, feel free to do so.
I came prepared with notes for all of our questions, so I'd be happy to have a more in-depth conversation. But one of the questions around alternatives, and I think Superintendent Diffenbaugh talked a little bit about sort of the multi-tiered systems of supports that we have. But the Justice Center has a really great report that kind of talks a little bit about best practices for SROs, the juvenile justice system, as well as some of those behavioral supports that you can put in place for students. I brought some copies of that for anyone that wanted it. And then back to the question, which I really just want to emphasize around immigration, any of our police officers doing immigration work on our campuses. The district did approve a resolution just reiterating and restating our commitment to ensure that every child who comes onto our campus, every person who's on our campus, is safe and welcome on our campus. So I brought copies of those as well for anyone that wanted to read it. If we do end up continuing the SRO contracts, which I do hope that we find a way to bring everyone out of their corners and figure out how we can do that in a way that is cost effective and sustainable. There's a list of things that I would like to have conversations about that I think we need to talk about as far as how we document the activity of the SROs when they're on campus and how that gets reported back out, at least to the district. There are some limited reporting that's in the scope of services and in the contract, but I think that including some additional information in there specifically about the demographics of student interactions would be helpful for us to have as policymakers. We do the culture survey around students feeling safe on campus. I think that having a question about the SRO interaction for both our faculty as well as our students would be another really important way for us to track how effective this program is. The training requirements, again, I would really love to see that we have at least a handful of officers in every district, in every police department that serves our schools, trained through it's a 40-hour SRO training. I know that's a huge commitment to ask, but having that cohort of officers who are available to serve our students, I think is, whether they're at the schools or whether they're in the community, I think is really important. I'd like to see a more in-depth evaluation criteria for how we're evaluating the success. We have a lot of really powerful anecdotal stories, but knowing, having some data that we can look at, compare from community to community, track over time would, I think, be prudent of us to have moving forward. We do that for most of our other contracts. The benefits of the SROs, one of the things that I didn't hear talked about from other folks tonight, but that I heard loud and clear from almost every administrator that I spoke to when I was trying to find out more about this program. When we do have mental health situations for students or parents, whether that's on campus, something that's happened off campus that finds its way onto campus, if one of our mental health therapists on campus or a principal determines that a student needs to be booked with a 5150 mental health hold, we do call an officer to campus. And that was one of the most valuable things that was cited to me by administrators, was being able to have a trained SRO who responded to those calls. Because when they didn't have a trained SRO respond to those calls, the handling of that booking was very different. So that was just one more thing that I wanted to mention. I think including this, the SUPTED, the ALICE training, the ARC program, the cadet program in our scope of service, and being really explicit that that's part of what's being included in this this contract, I think would be helpful for the community and for us, just to be really clear about what is the purpose of this program and what are the expectations that we have for whoever is funding it. The contract does specifically state that all responsibilities regarding school-based discipline outlined in Ed Code will be the sole responsibility of MPUSD certificated administration. Just wanted to point that out since that was a question that was answered, and it is very explicit in the contract. There are a number of families and parents, specifically parents and families of color, who are not necessarily speaking out in Marina, but who I've had an opportunity to speak to. And I do think that when a family or when a mother or a parent or a student says that they're fearful of being on campus, whether that's counted in that 45% who doesn't feel safe on campus, whether that's because of any reason, I think that we need to listen to them very carefully, and we need to understand that fear isn't something you can, maybe it's not based in reality, maybe it is based in reality, but being able to bring those folks into a place where they can have a conversation with whether it's Chief Nieto or Officer Ball, so that we can really understand where that's coming from and what do we need to do about that. I think it's less of an issue in Marina, it's less of a public issue in Marina, it's more of an issue in some of the other communities that the district serves. But finding the right way to be present to hear those concerns and to respond to those concerns, and doing that in the context of our SRO program is something that I think we as a district and need to work more closely with some of our SRO programs on. So I think that summarizes a lot of what I was hoping to share. But again, this is a really important conversation, and we have to figure out how to maintain a positive, close relationship between our police departments and our school districts. Like that's the end game. How we get there and how that works, I think that we're going to have to continue talking about that.
Thank you very much for all the effort you put into those questions. I would have made fewer questions if I known you were going to work that hard. Anyone else? Superintendent, Tom?
I would just have to say that it's not a partnership unless both entities have skin in the game. We can't expect the city to continue to have the SRO available, train the officers as SROs. We can't expect that if the district doesn't have skin in the game. I, for one, am very worried if the SROs are not available to us as to things that may happen on campus. We don't know all of the things that by Officer Ball being out there making contacts with students and befriending them and all that. We don't know, and we'll never know, things that maybe he was able to prevent just by being there and being a mentor to these students. Scholars, as they like to call them in Marina. We need to look long and hard at how to continue this program, whether it be private funding or the partnership between MPUSD and the city continuing. We really need to look long and hard at that. And the last thing I want is to have an incident at one of our schools and me being the guy that sat behind the dais and voted to cut the funding for the SRO. That's the last thing I want.
Thank you, Tom. Anyone else?
I'll just say that, Marina's a special community, and I've always said Marina really cares about their kids, and it's very clear. And that the collaboration we have with the city is unique and special and to the benefit of our kids. So I just want to thank the city for that and the investment that the city's made. And I think that it can even grow and get even bigger and better. But I just want to publicly thank the city for that, and know that this is a complex issue, and there's lots of different perspectives that we heard in our public meetings about it. And the hope is that, for me anyways, is that we'll continue to work together in a collaborative way, even if the district board decides not to fund the SROs, that we'll find ways to continue our collaboration in a positive manner, because I do think it ultimately benefits our kids.
Great, thank you.
Can I make one about, this is a statement, not a question, a statement?
Go ahead.
I was a security officer at Pacific Grove High School. When the resource officer that was on campus had to leave, the security officer would still monitor and patrol the grounds. So there was always somebody there to respond to any conflict.
Thank you. It's interesting. That's Pacific Grove?
Right.
Thank you. I want to thank very much all of you on the panel and Officer Ball for appearing this evening, and all of you showing up. This flyer was sent out by the Recreation Director and others to as many parents as possible. all I can say is, all I can do is offer the opportunity, and I thank you all very much for taking advantage of this opportunity to show up. And please, let the people know that Wednesday, anyone speak to Wednesday at 6:30, we're going to possibly be, it's on the agenda, we'll possibly have someone pull it, and we'll be discussing it and what the city is going to go and do forward. And we most likely will have our recreation director there if questions come up relating to the importance in his mind and others of what the SRO means. So, thank you.
Will the
Please stay
district be
around.
there? Will a district representative be at our city council meeting?
I hope someone will, but I can't twist around and get it there.
So Wednesday?
It's Wednesday, it's starting at 6:30 at the city council chamber.
If it's full, will it go before 10 o'clock at night?
We'll make sure it doesn't reach people. Why, is there a game on? I mean, the Super Bowl pages.
No, it's a matter of people give up and go home and never hear.
When the county had its
Excuse
probation,
me,
I know
help
you're-
yourself to cookies, please.
when probation was in the schools, was the MPUSD contributing to the county's probation officer funds?
Yes.
And so
Yeah.
what was that savings now that they're gone?
Yeah,
Those
so
are the questions I was going to ask you on Wednesday.
they had a grant, and so we were paying a third of their officers. But they had 3 officers, I believe. So I think the total cost to the district was around 150,000 for the.
One third, but probation was primarily high school. You didn't have the contact with all the, you had contact with probation.
Yes, they were primarily at the high school level, but some at the middle school level.
Yeah, but still, I mean, the SRO program is every child gets an equitable distribution of benefit versus probation is a limited source.
Yeah.
So still what I don't hear is how the school district is going to beef up and how you guys are going to allocate among your existing staff the responsibilities of those probation officers and the functions fulfilled by the SRO. And what is that going to cost? It is going to be training and additional costs, the risk that those people, if I was a school teacher and I'm taking on that risk, am I going to be paid more money? That is a missing element that didn't appear here today. That you're asking to shift to us, but I'm saying if we can't take it, or how it's equitably shifted, that's why I asked, what does the mirror image look like on campuses if this program goes away? And it's still not there.
Yeah, well, I mean,
It might be in some place, but we didn't hear.
Well, let me try to explain it to them better, because it's similar with the probation officer. Our kids still have probation officers. They still get the county service. They just don't get it, the probation officers aren't there on campus every single day. We still will have police services. My guess is the response times will be slower, the service won't be quite as good because, you don't know the issues well, so you're not getting the tip about, relations status. But in terms of the services that officers provide, in terms of law enforcement services,
Yes,
we
the law enforcement
will
portion,
still get it.
you'll still get, but what you don't get is the preventative portion of the job. That's that grade 5, junior high, is that now all you have is, again, putting an officer into the district, pretty much putting his prevention on, and nothing else.
Right. Yeah, I mean, so it will be, like I said, we'll have our system of support, we'll have our tiered system, we'll continue to build that. We won't have the officer as part of that system. But we don't, to answer your question, we don't plan to hire extra campus monitors or extra people, not extras, not more than we already have. So we'll have to continue to meet the kids' needs with the resources that we have. So we don't plan to
You had other questions.
add people in lieu of an officer. We're going to do this or that.